I was in Brownies and there were some girls who were really, really mean to me based on the color of my skin, like just very, very mean. And I wanted to quit. I was like, I am out of here. I don't need this thing. And they really gave me okay, well, here's the thing. You committed to it. So we're going to see it through. Who are the people who do like you? Let's go closer to those people, right? Let's be closer to those friends and, let those other. And so I would just encourage parents to, have that conversation. And again, sometimes it's not going to be fair, right? At the end of the day, that's also part of the reason I wrote the book, like Never Quit on a Bad Day, because there are going to be times where it's just not fair. It's not right. It's not fair.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Flip Your Mindset. I am your host, Stacey Uhrig, and today's guest is Phebe Trotman, author of the newest book, Never Quit on a Bad Day. Let me tell you a little bit about Phebe before we get started. So Phebe is a Vancouver-based entrepreneur, and she's an accomplished soccer player, which I'm sure we'll be talking about. She's achieved many accolades as an athlete, including in being inducted into several sports halls of fame, winning championship titles, and being recognized as an exceptional athlete. Phebe has also excelled in her career as a network marketer, earning top rewards and recognition within her company. She recently released her first book in a planned series, and it's called Never Quit on a Bad Day, Inspiring Stories of Resilience. Reading it energizes you to overcome your challenges, strengthen you with the tools needed to do it, and invoke your sense of gratitude for your personal journey. She's passionate about personal growth and empowering others, and I'm really excited to have her here today. So welcome.
Thanks so much, Stacey. I'm excited and honored to be here with you today. I love the name of your podcast and everything you're doing.
I'm excited to have you. So I love the title of your book, and I love the part about resilience, because what people may or may not realize is when we talk about adversity, and we talk about adversity a lot because it's a podcast that focuses on trauma recovery and mental health, I believe resiliency is like a kryptonite to adversity. So what encouraged you to write this book, and why did resiliency have to have a main point in the book?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I mean, to tie into the name of the podcast, because our mindset is just so important. And the reason behind this book it was actually some friends that recommended I write a book. We were kind of talking about what's next in our lives. And I was saying, I want to create something to inspire and encourage and help people, just because I've been inspired and encouraged along my journey. And so they were the ones that suggested write a book. And I was like, okay, well, I'm sort of open to the idea. The book had to do two things. It had to help people, and I had to feel passionate about it. And I wasn't sure yet what the topic would be. And then the month before, I had an incredible honor. I was inducted into the Coquitlam Sports Hall of Fame. And in that induction ceremony, there was an interview. And the interviewer asked me, what has sport given me? And I shared that there's been so many life lessons that I've learned through participating in sport. And there's been incredible highs, like you talked about national championships and personal awards. However, the only reason I was able to have all those highs was because of the tough stuff, not making a team, not, sitting on the bench or not even dressing for games, and pushing through that to get to the other side and to have those successes. And so when I decided, okay, yes, I'm on board to write a book, I knew that I wanted that to be the theme of it. I wanted people to kind of see the story behind the story. We often see on social media all the highlights. However, what do people have to really go through to get to some of those highlights? And so once I, solidified the theme of the book, I was very excited about it because I knew it would help a lot of people. And I remember hearing that saying, never quit on a bad day, many, many years ago. And it's just always stuck with me because I believe, when we push through those tough days and get to the other side, that's where that growth happens. And so it really all came together, and I've just been really excited about it because it's been able to help a lot of people. And that really is the goal of the book.
So what is the story behind the story?
In terms of my story behind the story, or in general story behind the story?
You tell me, either one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I can share a little bit of the story behind the story. I mean, from a soccer perspective, I started playing many, many years ago. I was very, very young when I started. I was a little girl. I played on an all boys team, person of color, the only person of color on the team. And that was my intro into sport. And, thankfully it was a positive experience because I was used to, having an older sibling than my brother and, playing with him. And so pushed through, but there were challenges along the way for sure. Just being a person of color in the environment that I grew up in terms terms of as an athlete, trying out for a team. I had a lot of success early on, and I went for a team and I didn't make it, which was devastating. I just remember crying and crying and crying. And, my parents kind of had that accountability gut check moment of, okay, well, what do you want to do with this? Do you want to keep going? Do you not want to go? Like, it's ultimately up to you. And in that moment, that's where, a lot of looking back on it, I'm so grateful for that experience because it really taught me, to look forward to what I want to accomplish and how can I take personal responsibility for that. And I just worked hard. I was in the backyard always playing with a soccer ball because I knew I wanted to be an impact player. And thankfully, I was able to do that. And it wasn't always a cakewalk. I really had to work hard in terms of making teams and being an impact player and getting game time. And thankfully, those skills of resilience and pushing through and setting goals and taking accountability and focusing on what I can control has served me well later in years as an entrepreneur as well, too.
So can you paint us a picture of how it served you? What is it that you gained from some of those experiences as far as lessons learned?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, a big one with not making that team is really sitting in that emotion of all of it and looking and being like, well, what do I want? What do I ultimately want? Because I do feel like so many people, there's a lot of, when we can have clarity of what we're looking to accomplish, it helps us push through when we're going through some of those tough times. So I knew back then that I wanted to be an impact soccer player. And so I had to take accountability for what can I control? I can control my effort. I can control the things I do off the field and behind the scenes so that it helps me perform on the field and have that confidence, because ultimately when we put in the work behind the scenes, it helps with our confidence when we're in front in terms of whether that's in business or as an athlete. So that helped a lot of, really just focusing on what you can control, because there's so many things in life that's outside of our control, right? That back then in that particular instance with that soccer team, I didn't have control in terms of whether or not I made the team. I had control in terms of my effort. I didn't adjust well I was placed in another position. I didn't adapt well to it. So I've learned how to be flexible in terms of whatever environment I'm in, doing the best that I can do in that moment. And I think that's a really important lesson that has served me well in terms of just focusing on what I control and my effort and my work in terms of, again, just putting in the effort behind the scenes so that when it comes game time, I'm ready to perform.
It's interesting because one of the things that I'm thinking about is, well, there's actually two things. One is this inner sense of confidence that you were clearly very connected to from the get. And often when I'm talking to people, in even like clinical settings, like in one-to-one sessions, I talk a lot about self-leadership. It's really a concept that comes out of internal family systems or parts work, where we have these core qualities of leading our lives and engaging in life through what's known as self-led energy. And within the self-led energy, the qualities are calm, compassion, creativity, curiosity, but there's also courage and confidence. Courage and confidence are key. And sometimes people have really early adversity. We have early childhood experiences that create kind of a lack of confidence, right? There's something that creates a lack of confidence, which I would call a lack of connection to self, right? Because if you're connected to self, you have that confidence. But it hinders the person's relationship with self. And so therefore it hinders access to courage and confidence and compassion with self. It's almost like a shadow or like a blockage. So if you're talking to somebody who inherently is kind of being blocked from that confidence, right? What would you say to them as far as, how to re-engage with that? Have you ever been in scenarios where you haven't felt as confident, or you haven't felt as courageous?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would encourage and what I've sort of done is look for other areas in my life where I have had confidence or I have had successes, whether it is in business as an entrepreneur and venturing into the network marketing space. There was a lot of times that I didn't feel confident. And what I did was I looked back on soccer experiences where I did feel confident, where I did have success, where I put in the work. And I basically, for lack of a better term, borrowed that confidence from over here, from my soccer experience, and brought it over here and applied it it to my business. And so that would be something I'd encourage people to do, or start with one small little goal, something that you have complete access to. So maybe it's just like, you know what, tomorrow or today, if it's early in the day, I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk and do it. Right? Set little goals, have success with those little goals, because that just helps build up that confidence that, again, you can borrow and apply to other areas. So I would just encourage people to start with something small. Look back in your past, because at the end of the day, we all have stuff that we can be proud of that we've done. I believe every single person has something in their life. And
Yes.
so, yeah, just to reflect on that and bring that over and then continue to apply and grow. And let's face it, a lot of times that happens because it's something outside of our comfort zone, right? It's something new that we're experiencing, like even, preparing for a podcast, right? There's times where it's like, I'm a little nervous, but I look at things that I've done in the past that I've had success with. I've done the preparation, and then I bring that over into applying to new situations.
I think remembering those moments is so key and critical, because we do all have them. They might be quiet. They might be having like a dimmer light on them, right? They might be sitting in a shadow, but we've had them. And you're making me think of a workshop that I used to do pre-COVID, and it was called The Road to Resilience. And, the reality of that workshop was we stay in story, right? And we let these stories of, say, adversity or challenge confirm to us that things aren't available to us, versus harnessing them for what is available to us. And so I kind of, in that workshop, I teach them how to rewrite the story. I get them to look at what the gifts were in that particular challenge, rewrite the story the way it is remembered in their head. And then we kind of talk about gifts gained. And then I have them rewrite the story, and I have them start to realize where resilience was born in that particular experience. But the most powerful part of that workshop, and this is what you're making me think of, is I actually give them quite a bit of time to start to catalog every experience they've ever had in life that's a milestone. I mean, any experience. So say you're a firstborn child and your next sibling is born. There's some resilience that requires of sharing space. How about leaving your parent or your caretaker's hand for the first time when you're walking into preschool or walking into kindergarten, or getting, taking a test that you were afraid to take of, or graduating from high school or starting college, like just the courage, or starting a new team, or graduating from college, getting that first job, going on that first date. Like, there are so many little tiny moments that we take for granted where courage is required, confidence is required, and resilience is born. And when they get to see how many of those moments that came up to them actually required resilience, they're like, I'm fucking badass.
Yes, absolutely. I love that, because
Right?
it's so important.
It's so important. And I said, the reason why I want you to do this exercise is because you're going to have a moment where you're going to come up against something that's adverse again. Something that's scary, or a challenge, or something where someone's requiring something of you where you're not really latched into that confidence. And it's just a quick reminder to be like, I've done hard things, and I know I can do hard things because I've done them, because I'm here. Life is hard.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's brilliant. I think that's so important. And it just, to do that workshop and give people the space to be, because that's such an important thing too, is oftentimes we're all so busy, go, that people need to create that space, or have that space where you can have the time to look back and look at all those little things that really are big things, as you're highlighting. Those are huge moments.
They're huge, but we just kind of take them for granted because they're not really praised per se, right? The other thing I was thinking about is, young children today who are in sports, who maybe don't make the team that they want, or are really phenomenal, but maybe there's some politics involved and they don't make a particular team. And I fear, and I witnessed, because I had a son that played at a high level of a sport at one time, how many parents disallow their children to feel discomfort and pain.
Mhm.
And I think resilience is often born from discomfort and pain and challenge. So in the sport, because you've been in the space of high intensity sport, right, at a very high level, what kind of advice can you give to parents? Because I think a lot of parents listen to this podcast. They have a child that's up against any kind of disappointment, whether it's sports, school, not getting into a particular university, whatever it is. What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And I coach. So I run a program actually for children under 4, so 3 years old to 7 years old. And I'm still involved in the game of soccer in a lot of different capacities. And that is something. And I understand the wanting to protect someone you care about from going through that experience. That being said, I am so grateful to my parents for letting me go through that pain, because out of that did birth a different perspective in terms of my life and going after things that I want. And so I would just encourage parents to, be there to support your child through that. Ask them what they ultimately want, because with my parents, they gave me my parents were always the ones who, like, for example, I was in Brownies and there were some girls who were really, really mean to me based on the color of my skin, like just very, very mean. And I wanted to quit. I was like, I am out of here. I don't need this thing. Like, and they really gave me okay, well, here's the thing. You committed to it. So we're going to see it through. Who are the people who do like you? Let's go closer to those people, right? Let's be closer to those friends, and let those other people. That's their issues. Those are their things, and we're all young and whatnot. So, and in the soccer world, with that, when I didn't make that team, I was devastated. There were a lot of reasons, and whatever the reason was that I didn't make it, and I know my parents, because I was a top player on the team, there was a little bit of this, like, wait a second, why didn't she make the team, right? But at the end of the day, the decision was made. So now they gave me that space to go, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Right? This is an optional team. It's not the sport of soccer as a whole. So do you want to continue? And I did want to continue. And then it was a conversation of like, okay, well, what can you control? And then it was I can control how hard I work, the extra practice I put in, my attitude, adjusting to sometimes being in a position that maybe isn't my favorite position, but doing the best I can. And so they let me come to that realization of what do I want? And then how do I work through that? And so, I'm sure it wasn't an easy thing seeing your kid cry on a couch for like a week straight, because I cried a lot, you guys. I was devastated. But in that just, it served me so well in so many ways in terms of my life. And so I would just encourage parents to, have that conversation. And again, sometimes it's not going to be fair, right? At the end of the day, that's also part of the reason I wrote the book, like Never Quit on a Bad Day, because there are going to be times where it's just not fair. It's not right. It's not fair. It's also kind of some part of life that we have to work through, and what can we control and focus on those things.
Well, it's so interesting, when we talk about life not being fair, I think we have this notion that life is supposed to be fair.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And I remember having this conversation with my grandmother, and I forget which one of us started the conversation, but I know it kind of went into this. She's like, well, that's not really good, or that's not really fair. And I said, well, who says it's supposed to be? Like, isn't life, I don't know. My personal philosophy is life is a series of experiences divinely designed for you. Now, when I first came up with that saying, for years, I used to say life is a series of challenges divinely designed for you. But I was like, well, look, all experiences are divinely designed. I'm not religious. I don't mean it's God-led per se. I just believe that there's a bigger source and a bigger power, and there's a bigger plan. And I do kind of believe that people, and this is again, personal philosophy, that kind of when we're born, there's like this huge ticker tape that's like, this is the plan for this chick. And she's going to have quite the journey from here to here. And some of it is going to be glorious and amazing, and it's going to feel good. Some of it is not going to feel good. Some of it's going to get her down on her knees, but those moments are going to be strategically placed on her journey to remind her of how strong she is, to give her the courage to stand up, to learn how to lean onto other people, to learn how to ask for help. Like, I really do believe it's kind of not predestined per se, but I feel like the end is kind of always the end, and you have all of these windy roads and there's these different paths, and you can take the path most taken or the path least taken, but they're all going to end up back at the same spot. Reminds me a little bit of a movie called Sliding Doors.
Yes, great movie.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So no matter if she got on the subway or she didn't get on the subway, getting on and getting off the tube or getting on and not getting out changed the trajectory of her life. And you got to see these parallel lives, but the end was the same. And I do believe when I saw that movie, I was like, oh my God, that's the way I think. So I do believe that that movie represents a concept. And so when we come up against these things, the things that are adverse and don't feel good, we often automatically go with the mindset of, because it doesn't feel good and it's not the way I thought it would go, it's therefore wrong. But if there is a plan in place, it's not wrong. It just sucks.
Yeah.
And it really is horrible sometimes. But what is it that you're meant to learn in this lifetime? And what is it that you're meant to gain as living through this human experience in this lifetime? That is going to be had and can only be had through this really adverse experience.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I love how you changed it from challenges to events, because right away when you did that, for me, I was thinking, what's challenging for some people isn't challenging for another person, right? So at the end of the day, when you use that word event, because that really is what it is, and we have a choice to look at it, with whatever perspective and that we want to apply. It's interesting. The other day I went to go get my eyes checked, and I started thinking about it, because it's like, okay, why do we wear glasses at the end of the day? Why do some people wear glasses? Well, to see clearly. And so in some ways I started thinking about that, and I thought, and it's going to be a training I'm going to develop a little bit more, but we have the option of putting on those glasses, those gratitude glasses, when we look at an experience we went through and finding the gratitude for it, or putting on what's the lesson I'm going to learn, glasses, and see what can we pull from that experience. Because as you said, everything that we go through is serving us. It's setting us up, because there are going to be more challenges. And just like you talked about looking back and, the first time you go to preschool and you let go of your parent's hand, that builds resilience to help strengthen you for the next experience that you have. Maybe it's riding a bike and taking off those training wheels. And then that builds resilience and success and confidence to help apply to the next one. And all those events that we go through really do help us if we allow it to, and if we look at it for what it was.
Well, that's really the point, right? And, my business is called Flip Your Mindset, and the podcast is called Flip Your Mindset, but it's based on this idea is you're going to change the lens, flip the lens through which you see life. Now, I will be honest, it's not easy for everybody to do, because there are some people that are rooted in story, interpretation, if you will, of experience that is self-limiting. And they're looking through life through that particular set of glasses. Yeah. Right. So often when I work with people, this is why I'm trained in hypnosis and a hypnotherapy model, because sometimes you have to kind of tap into the subconscious to allow somebody to see, oh my God, I actually did put on a pair of glasses at that age with this particular lens. And I've literally seen myself, others in the world around me through this lens the entire time. But I'm like 50 now, and I put that lens on when I was 5, and maybe it was relevant then, but it's not relevant now. So for people that are listening that say, well, that's nice for you, but I don't have that, or that's not available to me. That's often a limiting belief. Like, what you have is great and it's available to everybody, like gratitude, or this ability to see life with joy and peace and connectedness. But if there are parts of somebody that were developed in protection of them that disallow that, it's not as easy to just say, oh, well, I'm just going to change today and I'm going to force myself to find it. Like, it can be more complicated than that for some people. but it is available to everybody. You just have to find someone to do the work with to help you regain that sense of availability.
Absolutely. And that's why I think it's so powerful what you do, because there are people who can help someone work through it. Right. And you're right. Not everybody has, a similar upbringing and childhood and different experiences and different lenses. And so that's where I would encourage someone, if you are struggling, to start to look at certain events with a little bit of the gratitude or the lesson, or as you said, the gifts. Who can you plug into? Talk to Stacey.
Yeah.
Reach out to her, because it is available. And one of the things that, just like when you put on a pair of glasses and now you can see clearly, it will change someone's life. If they haven't lived with that lens of, whatever that lens is that isn't serving them for many, many years or even a year, once you connect with someone like you, Stacey, and you work through it with them, now you're starting to see everything. And there's no time like now to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just to reach out and just be open to it, because it's transformational. And that's ultimately, I think, what we want for people, is just to have that transformation, to be able to start to experience some of that joy and peace, and realize just truly how strong they are. And so that's why, I love what you're doing, because you're helping people change that lens to something that's going to serve them and serve them well for the rest of their life.
Yeah, it's a gift. And I'm always so honored when somebody's ready to do the work, right? All I can do is hold the space and guide. People have to come to it on their own, that they're ready to do that, which is a whole other podcast in and of itself. But, let's talk a little bit more about the book and what people can gain from the book and what people can experience through the book and how they can find it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things with the book's a collection of short stories. So it's really a book that you can open it up to. You can read it from chapter 1 all the way to the end, or you can just open to a chapter and just read that chapter. And so the book has short stories from a series of incredible contributors. At the end of every chapter, there is a section called Reflections on Resilience. And the reason that's in there is that's a 1-page exercise for the reader, really to do some of the stuff we've talked about, tap into some of those past experiences that you've had successes in, and think about, what do you want to accomplish in your life? And so I love that part of it, because it does really help the reader, so that when you're done reading the book, you're walking away with just remembering some of the things you've always wanted to do, remembering some of the successes you had, remembering why you are uniquely you, to help you and serve you well in your life. And there's also a QR code at the end of every chapter where you can scan it, pops up a video from that contributor, and it's just another word of encouragement. So I always tell people, it's the QR code to the video is not the contributor telling the same story you just read. It's actually something different that they had on their heart to share. So it's really it's a really unique experience. And so we've had a lot of positive feedback and reviews from people who have read the book, and just, it's helped them along their journey, which just means so, so much. And so the book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can also get it on my website, which is just neverquitonabadday.com. There is a free chapter. So for those of you, if you're not ready to get the full book, just go to the website. You can get the free chapter, and that chapter is a powerful one. I chose that one specifically because it's all about belief and the language, the words that we use. Are the words we're using, are they serving us, helping us move forward, or are they hindering us? And so that's available for free to any and everyone. If you go to neverquitonabadday.com, you can get that chapter, and then that'll link you to Amazon as well if someone's ready to.
I love that. So again, it's neverquitonabadday.com. And are you on any kind of social media? Can people follow you there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram as well as Facebook, and it's just Never Quit on a Bad Day.
I love it. So guys, obviously you're going to want to go and get the free chapter. All the links are going to be in the bio and in the show notes. It's Phebe Trotman, and Phoebe's name is Phebe Trotman. The book is Never Quit on a Bad Day. I don't see any reason why nobody should be running out and getting it today, especially if they're struggling with resilience. Sometimes just sitting down and getting reflective and getting curious and gaining awareness can be the first step in anybody's healing journey. So as we wrap up, Phebe, what is the one thing you would like people to be able to walk away having learned from today's episode?
Oh, that's a great question. So many things going through my head. One thing I want to encourage people, because you're hearing this podcast today for a reason. And I remember being part of a training, and the training was just like, if you're here for a reason, as you talked about, Stacey, there's a series of events. And so everyone listening, you're here for a reason. If you need additional help, I just want to encourage you to reach out to Stacey. That is really on my heart right now, because there are so many people who, you're right, Stacey, it isn't as easy as just kind of like flipping it and going, well, today's the day, right? Some people need some additional help and encouragement. And so for those of you who are in that space, today's the day. You're here for a reason. You're hearing us for a reason. So my final word would be reach out to Stacey. It will be transformational for you. And then we just want to celebrate you along your journey. And so I'm just cheering people on in whatever they want to do, because I truly believe when you live a passionate life, it inspires everyone else around you. And there's a ripple effect from that as well, too. So thank you so much, Stacey, for having me on today.
Of
It's just a
course.
pleasure to connect with you. You are an incredible human being. So I love being in your space. It truly energizes
You're a beam
me.
of light yourself. So I actually have some ideas I'll talk to you about offline about collaborating, because I have a couple of great ideas for my next resilience workshop. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited for people to go gain that book. Again, guys, it's Never Quit on the Bad Day. The author is Phebe Trotman. It's Phebe. If you guys like this episode, tune into all episodes. We drop a podcast every single week. It's at Flip Your Mindset, and you can find that right at flipyourmindset.com. Thanks, guys.